and that was an interlude track from Radiohead's OK Computer, released in 1997. And that is our album of the week. So me and Mark will be talking through that today.
I would just like to say as well, for anyone who was sort of doing something in that transition from song 2 into Fit to Happy, we do apologise. Obviously, as that song, I can imagine, if you're doing your shopping or whatever, and you get caught off guard listening to that track, I'd just like to apologise for that. Creeped anyone out a bit, but
but I do think it sets quite a good tone for what the album is. It is halfway through the album.
But, yeah.
But if you just listen to that singular track, I think you kind of understand like the whole like general gist of OK Computer.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, if you would say to me like which song like summarizes the album, I would probably say that one, just because like
yeah, I'd say that or Paranoid Android. I think those two. Yeah. I like to look at the album as each song is like almost a singular character going through it all and just struggling with like conformity to society, alienation, and just struggling with like technology moving forward and stuff like that. In general.
Yeah.
So just a quick background. Tom York started writing lyrics for it on a 2-year-long tour for the Bends. So they were basically stuck in a tour bus for 2 years, going around. I think they did 7 legs of the tour because they just wanted to get popularity off the Bends. They were trying to get some sort of traction off of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, weren't they touring with REM, wasn't it?
Yeah, so they REM, but then also they were going on their own as well. They were like I said, 7 different legs, 7 different tours, but pretty much in like one after another for 2 years. But a big bulk of the album was recorded at Jane Seymour's house in Bath.
Oh, Jane Seymour, the actress, yeah.
Yeah, actress. She was in Wedding Crashers and Live and Let Die.
Live and Let Die, great film.
Good film.
Good film.
But I didn't know this before looking into it the other day. The Cure and New Order have also recorded albums there before.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The album peaked at number 1 in the charts and spent 100 weeks in the charts. It only spent 2 weeks at number 1, but it spent 100 weeks there.
Only 100 weeks. Only.
I mean, let's not judge success by how many records they sold. But yeah, and this is the first album produced by Nigel Godrich for Radiohead. So I think that sets up a nice...
Was it first or second?
It's first he produced, but
because he's the engineer on the Bends, wasn't he?
He engineered the Bends, but he was the first producer here.
Yeah.
So let's just quickly jump straight into the tracks. So the first track is Airbag, a song about Tom York surviving a car crash, and I think it immediately sets up the disdain for technology throughout the album that goes on from here.
Yeah, it's one of those tracks as well. I can imagine, like, say you were a big Radiohead fan coming off of the Bends, for example, and you're like, oh, I can't wait to hear this new Radiohead album. And you hear this, and you're like, I reckon you'd be very thrown off.
Yeah,
you'd be very...
especially because you think before this, it was the Bends and Pablo Honey, which obviously they sound different, but they're similar. They're more rock, less experimental than this album. So I can see what you're saying, but yeah, it's a great story behind the song, and I think it suits perfectly to this album.
Oh,
it's a great opening track.
It's the perfect opener, I think. Like it's one of those tracks as well. Like I was sort of looking at the personnel of sort of like, because there's so much going on. You're sort of thinking like, oh, there must be loads of different instruments and that sort of thing on like the album. Then you look at it, it's pretty much it's just a normal band, and you've just got like a couple of mellotrons and like synthesizers. It's incredible what they've been able to create.
I think this is
from so little.
This is something that I love about Radiohead so much, is that from using just pure instruments and experimenting with a basic instrument, they create such a unique and experimental sound. I think as well that goes down to Nigel Godrich being on this album.
I think as well as the whole song, like it, with hindsight, you can definitely see like that it's foreshadowing the direction towards Kid A. Like when you from especially listening to it last night, I was sort of like I could definitely see why they were definitely heading in that direction of like more art, alt, electro sort of rock sort of style.
Then second track, Paranoid Android. It was first single off the album. The lyrics are, I don't know if you saw this from what you were looking through, but a lot of the lyrics are based off of an experience Tom York had in an LA bar. He was just chilling at the bar, and he was just kind of observing like the general public that are in there, and he said he was kind of scared by the way people were acting, and like he found it quite frightening. And a specific line, "Kicking, screaming, Gucci little piggy," refers to a woman in the bar who apparently was coked up, and someone spilt a drink on her and she just flipped. And a lot of this song is kind of like after those events that followed.
I know a lot of you are asking sort of, oh, Mark, how are you going to link to the Beatles in this? And I can. I've done it. I found it. So when researching, I found that so the Beatles song "Happiness Is a Warm Gun," it was a huge influence for this track. It's the whole thing of like combining different songs together and putting it into one single track. Yeah. It was a huge influence on that. So I think because from what I looked up, it was sort of each part. There's different parts of the song are written by different members of the band, and then it's sort of fused together into one track. And
it is almost like three different songs.
That
in
approach
one.
is inspired from the Beatles song "Happiness Is a Warm Gun."
See, I kind of look at it more as this is Radiohead's Bohemian Rhapsody.
Oh, I can see that. Yeah.
Because of the different states and it being kind of cryptic, like it's not a straight ahead song and stuff like that. But we'll go on to the third song, "Subterranean Homesick Alien." Big nihilistic song and kind of it's something that I think I like the song so much because I agree with kind of what he's saying and just kind of points out the insignificance of humans and how really what we're doing here, it doesn't really mean anything, but it kind of says it in a beautiful way.
Yeah,
with
I think
beautiful music as well.
I think with this, one thing I noticed from this track, I don't think a lot of people would notice it. I think that the drumming work, especially, is very, very. I think in terms of the drumming work on the album, this might be the best one. There's another track as well that it's between those two. I just think the drumming on that track is really, really good, actually.
Yeah, great track. And then next one, I think this is Mark's favourite title on the album, maybe. Exit music for a film.
Yeah. I do love that. I do love the idea of sort of like, again, I don't know if this is true, but I can imagine just Tom York being like, oh yeah, we need to write a song for this film, so we'll just call it exit music for a film. And they do the whole song, and then he's like, nah, you know what, we'll just keep the title.
So just explaining the title for anyone who doesn't know. So the song was actually made for the 1996 remake of Romeo and Juliet. You know the
yeah, I had to watch it for English back.
The one with Leonardo DiCaprio in.
Yeah.
It was meant to be for a scene like very near the end of the film. The band was shown two random scenes, and Tom York actually said that he can't remember the second scene, but the first scene inspired him so much, and they went straight away and made the song. But then, unfortunately, it didn't actually make its way into the film. It was actually swapped out for talk show host, by Radiohead as well.
Oh. Okay.
But yeah, it was swapped out for that, and this ended up on the album, thankfully, because I do like talk show host, but I think exit music for a film is
this really goes with the album. Like, it doesn't look out of place at all.
And I do think talk show host makes sense in the movie as well. I think it plays during the credits, but it's a good song for that.
It's not a song that I can remember off the top of my head, but I feel like if I heard it, I'd be like, oh yeah.
You've seen the film, so you've heard the song.
Yeah,
so,
I would have done. Yeah.
I'd say this track, if anything, is probably the most Johnny Cash inspired Radiohead song I've heard. Maybe.
Yeah,
I was reading a little bit about them talking about this track, and they said that at the time they were very obsessed with with a few Johnny Cash tapes. So I can see it in the song once listening to it after.
Yeah.
And then after is Let Down. Personally, I think this is probably my least favourite track on the album, but that doesn't mean I dislike it. There's something I want to talk about this briefly as well, because I remember, because I was watching some Radiohead videos, and like there was one that I came across, was like, oh, musicians and people talk about their favourite Radiohead songs. A lot of people really love this one. Yeah,
and for me, like I think it's not. I mean, in terms of as a song, it's not similar. But I mean, in terms of where it stands on the album, it reminds me a lot of. Do you remember Zombie Zoo from Full Moon Fever that we did?
Yeah.
It's like on its own, it's a very good song. But I think in comparison to like the rest of the album, it's quite underwhelming. Mm-hmm. Like, it's one of those ones I sort of like. All the other songs sort of do what this song does, but better in a sense. Okay, I get that. It doesn't. It's not in terms of in terms of all the other songs. It's just not as groundbreaking.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't disagree with that. And a lot for me with Radiohead is like what they're talking about, and their lyrics is something that I really enjoy, like, looking into. And I don't know, this song I just don't really click with the lyrics. It's kind of explores the idea of like how emotions are all just kind of chemicals and they're all kind of the same. And I don't know, it's not really something that I can really get my... Yeah. Like, I understand the idea of it, but it's not something I really like.
Because whenever I always try... Because I've heard a lot of people... Because Radiohead are one of those bands, a lot of people are like, oh no, they're really overrated and they're very pretentious. But this is one of those tracks I'm like, yeah, I can see why people would find this a bit pretentious. Mm-hmm.
And the next track is Karma Police. I think this probably is my favourite track on the album. personally.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely up there for me. Like, I love the bass drum on this. It's just so good. Like the thump that bass drum's able to get. It's just whoever's obviously mixed or engineered, or I mean, maybe Nigel Godrich probably played a role in that and like getting that. But it just sounds so.
Yeah,
it sounds really good on the track.
It sounds beautiful. I don't know if you watched their Glastonbury set the other year.
I didn't.
They play Karma Police to close, and it's like, not that I really religiously watch Glastonbury sets, but probably one of the best Glastonbury sets I've ever seen. And like just seeing that whole crowd just singing like I Lost Myself and stuff like that. It's a beautiful moment, as well as lyrics amazing, and sounding amazing as well. But then we get on to about the halfway track of the album, 7th track, Fitter Happier, where they use an Apple Macintosh simple text application to say that was the track that played just before we started talking. Not really much to say about it. It's just kind of an interlude to bring the whole album together.
I do want to say, actually, I really like the use of the sort of the computerized voice they use.
Yeah,
I feel like, because when I was listening to it last night, I sort of really thought like, because if it was just someone reading it in like a creepy voice or whatever, it wouldn't really have the same effect. But the fact that it's like emotionless almost makes it even more scary. And the way it, like the sort of music sort of gradually builds up. That's what that album. This is what the album as a whole is really good at. Sort of like if you were to listen to like a second from the start and the end of the song, you think, how do you get from one to the other?
Yeah.
But like the way it's like done, like they gradually build different elements, and it like they do that with this song as well.
It is the perfect way to do an interlude on this album, I think. Because again, linking back to technology, which I think all of this goes back to, is this album was written at a time, you need to remember, where technology is really starting to become more part of our day-to-day lives, phones and stuff like that. And again, an Apple Macintosh simple text application is a perfect way to just almost give a break from the music, but at the same time kind of enforce that idea of technology. But the next song is Electioneering. Before we get on to talking about that, we're just going to quickly play the track. So enjoy that track. And that was Electioneering by Radiohead. I think it is the only really forwardly political song on that album. OK Computer.
Yeah, what I find interesting as well, because obviously it is the most like politically charged sort of track, and it's also the track that out of all the songs, it's like the closest to sort of their older roots. It is Radiohead going back to like their older roots, which it's actually quite nice to see on an album where like obviously there's a lot more like just from a production standpoint. So it's so much more experimental. Like it's quite nice like to have just one track that's sort of like is a bit more back to basics. Like and I can imagine for sort of older, for the more like sort of people who are maybe more into Pablo Honey especially. Yeah. Maybe like this one a lot. I can't say I know that for sure, but
no, I can see that too. But I like it. I think it makes sense as well. With it being more kind of like generic kind of rock, less experimental, and it being more of a political song.
That's kind of the point I was making.
Kind of almost becoming. It's not punk at all, but it's that whole idea of that sound, the harsher sound makes more sense with a political kind of.
Well, hard rock often is associated with being like more rebellious. So it makes like I think that it's a great choice. I think. Yeah,
I think it's a good track. Not my favorite on the album, but it's still a great track.
I'd say it's nearer the bottom, but I still really like. I can still appreciate this song.
You can never knock a track aimed at politicians lying and stuff like that. And in general, it's the whole the idea behind the track, and it technically it's kind of. It makes sense if it was aimed at Tony Blair at the time, because at the time it was written, it was around the Tony Blair era and him like talking his way into power and stuff like that. And if you look at the lyrics, a lot of it seems very parallel to what he was saying. Yeah. So again, just I love a story with a good a song with a good story like that behind.
Don't we all?
And then next is Climbing Up the Walls. Which I think makes sense after Electioneering with the pacing of the album.
Yeah, this is a track where I remember, because I listened to it. It wasn't really until yesterday I was like, oh, I get this track. Because for a while I just sort of like, I didn't really think much of it. It just sort of went over my head the first few times. But I was listening to it last night, and I was just really blown away by it.
Yeah, it's haunting. It's scary.
It's one of those things. Like I was just gonna see what there's something I wrote down about it that I thought was quite interesting. Yeah, it's one of those tracks. Like, obviously, I'm not saying it's terrible lyrically. Mm-hmm. But it's one of those tracks that it's a phrase I may end up saying quite a lot. It's not necessarily about the lyrics; it's more about the vibe of this one. Like, like
Well,
musically, it's just it's
Mhm.
like it's like I was thinking as well. Like if I was to sort of create like if you were to say like, oh, how would you musically portray like sort of like a mental disorder?
Yeah.
I would think of something like
Okay.
climbing up walls.
Okay.
That's why I really appreciate it from like a
Yeah.
musical standpoint.
See what I would say back to that is when you do dive into the lyrics, I think that sound makes even more sense.
Oh, I'm sure it does. Yeah,
because
that's the
being,
thing that I've noticed with that track. Like
it being written from a perspective of like a fear of like just the fear itself is almost right in the track, and then that combined with like this insane, like you said, like insane and like haunting horror. Like it's not a nice, pretty sound, is it? Like it's uncomfortable. It makes you uncomfortable, but almost in a nice way.
Yeah,
and it makes sense with the lyrics. But then we go on to No Surprises, which is probably one of my favourite tracks on the album. It's like from a perspective of someone who's like quite depressed and kind of feels like there's no way out. If you get me.
Yeah, I was interested to hear like when looking up this song. Apparently, I'm guessing from a sound perspective, not lyrically, but from a sound perspective, it's apparently fairly influenced by Beach Boys' album called Pet Sounds, which is like one of their most famous albums.
Okay.
It's perceived as like one of the greatest albums of all time, and I found that interesting. I never would have made that link before because I've listened to Pet Sounds a couple of times. It is especially for its time as well. It's like it's a very influential album on like just 60s music as a whole. Like it influenced like a lot of. It's a big influence on Sgt. Pepper actually. That album.
I'd probably argue that's my second favourite track on the album, mate. Probably just after either it's definitely top 3 with Karma Police and Paranoid Android.
It would certainly make my top 5. I know that for sure.
Yeah,
I couldn't tell you where, but somewhere in the top 5, I reckon.
And then just to speed this up because we're almost running out of time.
Yeah,
we've banged on about this album for almost too long. But yeah, so 11th track, Lucky. It's almost a sister track to Airbag, I think.
It was the first track to come from the album.
First track recorded. Yeah. First track recorded. It was actually recorded for the Help album, a War Child album. So it was like a charity album where they joined Massive Attack, Oasis, and the Stone Roses on there, which is a good cause to be writing a song, to say the least, and quite a good lineup to be joining as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is the one where I'd say this is my favourite track off. It might even be my favourite Radiohead song from the ones that I know. I think it's one of those songs that whenever I say that to people are always like, oh yeah, no, that is a really good song. I don't think it's a song that a lot of people will think of when they think Radiohead. Yeah. But for me, like I was just listening to it like yesterday, I was thinking like, I think this might, in terms of its guitar work, it might be have one of the best guitarists of like the last 25 years. Okay. Bold statement.
Big statement.
That's a big statement, but I stand by that. I stand by it. I think it's such a great song.
And then it goes on to the last track, The Tourist. Again, not my favourite track on the album. It's still I really like it, but it's, again, not my favourite. But I do think it makes a lot of sense when you put it in the context of the album, where you've had all of these songs before are quite like intense in terms of what they're talking about. Like none of them are a happy song, if you get me. Yeah. And then this kind of last song kind of wraps all those ideas together and kind of just reminds you that despite all these things going on and stuff like that, kind of just slow down and enjoy life, like kind of how but in a Radiohead way, like not in a like it's not like the Kooks are going to be coming in with all these like sunny vibes and stuff like that. That's not what Radiohead
to me
are.
I actually think this is one of my favourites of the album. Again, I think it's up there with top 5. I'd probably say number 4 or number 5. Like I do really enjoy this one. I love one thing is really cool actually. It's surprising to hear as well, but on the drumming track, I'm pretty certain they're using like some drumming sticks called hot rods that normally you'd use sort of if you're having like an acoustic set. Because obviously if you use like normal drumsticks and you have an acoustic show, like the drums is going to drown out the acoustic. So they'll use like these other sticks that sort of like have a quiet sound. They use them on this song, I'm pretty sure. Okay. And it sounds really nice. It sort of complements the song really well. And I just love the little ping at the end. Like it's such a great ending, like such a simplistic ending to such a like experimental.
It's been such a journey up to this point of getting through the album, like
ping. I really love that. I think that's part of the reason why I love it. It's just like the perfect like end to this album, I think. So
with an album with beautiful instrumentation, amazing experimentation, and for me, I think that the strongest part of the album is the lyrics and the subject matters that they tackle. What are you giving OK Computer Radiohead out of 10?
Well, see, this is the thing. I remember, the first time I ever listened to the album before the show even existed, I remember telling you that I did really like, and I feel like it was going to grow on me. And it honestly, like, I genuinely think it's going up there as one of my favorite albums of all time. I think in general, like, to be honest, I think with these album reviews, I'm gonna be that guy who just likes most things.
Okay.
I think that's just gonna end up being me. Like,
Yeah.
I think with a lot of sort of rock. Within the rock genre, I just appreciate a lot of different things. So
we'll have to try picking some bad albums at one point.
Oh, thing is, I could definitely find some like more controversial albums. Don't worry, but I think for a rating, I think I'm gonna be consistent, and I'm gonna give this one a 9 as well.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I think I'd have to listen to this more and see whether I put it above Full Moon Fever, but it's definitely at least on par. Like, I think from a like sort of objective standpoint, like, it's a better album.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, objectively, it's like obviously better. That. Like, just it's so much more groundbreaking.
But albums hold a place in your heart sometimes, and you can't help but lean towards them. See, for me, I'm kind of leaning between a 9 or a 10, but I think I have to go with a 9 because I think there's only one album I've ever listened to where at the time of listening to it, I knew it was a 10. Yeah. And I think, again, this is another album that I've had a long time for this to grow on me, and I can see it. If you asked me on another day, I could have said it was a 10. Like last night, I listened through the album 2 more times just to try to get a solid stance on it, but I can't decide. But I think just out of the fact that I can't decide whether it's a 9 or a 10 surely makes that a 9. Yeah, I think it's definitely a high 9 for me.
I'm certainly like considering that it may actually be like the best album of the 90s. Like, I'm definitely considering it.
Okay.
Again, like, I've not heard it but it's just it's one of those, it just, even from the first listen, you're like, this is really like groundbreaking. This is like, it like holds up.
Yeah. It is an incredible album, but for me to get a 10, it takes a lot. There's literally only one album ever where I've ever listened to it and thought it was a 10.
Yeah, I don't know if I actually would give any album a 10.
It's hard.
Like, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't think I could.
Okay, well, that was our album of the week, 1997's OK Computer by Radiohead. We're going to play what you said was your favourite track on the album, Lucky?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so let's pop Lucky on.